Inching closer towards the start of the football season. Yes, at the end of the month, we will have exhibition football in the NFL, but none of that matters. None of that counts. They don't even care about those games, the players themselves. Folks, college football is on the mind. The chat has been working for the past few weeks. The Feel Steel Fall college football magazines have been read, and we are ready to go. Starting next week, we'll be doing live Wednesday night summer sessions, getting you caught up on everything college football from a wagering perspective, plus a fandom. At the end of the day, we're all fans, and we just can't wait to be watching the games again on our television screens or near a dungeon near you. Let's just put it that way. I'm Beef Coil, Sean Brace, beef up front to open up this party with SEC, one of, if not the best conference in all of college football. Beef, another glorious day, sir, to talk some college ball. But yeah, man, we're going to open it up with the SEC. And I know you got a lot to say, but you know, the thing I want to put out there for the people right from the beginning is that, as you have seen, as we did read in the Phil Steele Football Preview magazine, the Big Ten was the better conference last year, top to bottom, versus the SEC. Is that fair to say in your mind?
As last year or as we head into this season?
Last year.
Yeah, I mean, the national champion comes from that conference. You have Oregon was the number one team throughout the entire season. You have Penn State, Drew Aller interception away from potentially going to the title game as well. So, you know, three of the top dogs there. But I still think SEC depth-wise is probably over top of it because you have, you know, a handful of teams. You have Alabama. If they don't drop that game to Oklahoma, they go to the playoff. Texas A&M, they're a game away from the playoff. Texas makes a run in the playoff to the Final Four. So you can go either way with it, but it's not hard to argue. Top dog the past 2 years has been the Big Ten with Michigan and then Ohio State. And I lump Oregon into there as well last year because they were the best team, you know, start to finish in college football throughout the regular season. And then they run into that buzzsaw that was that Ohio State team once it got playoff time.
Yeah, and look, my big takeaway, and again, I can't wait to talk about the Big Ten. We'll get into that next week. But my big takeaway from the College Football Magazine was, damn, Penn State, if it ain't their year this year, it will never be their year from everything that they have returning and the addition. So, but we will save that for next week. Let's focus on the SEC, and we got to start with Texas. I think that's the easy one for my mind, and it's all because of the quarterback, Manning. But Ryan Beef Coyle has been saying, pump the brakes on all the praise. He hasn't shown us a damn thing. Am I putting words in your mouth? Where do you stand on that one?
Yeah, I definitely am team pump the brakes. And it seems like that's kind of, you know, SEC media days. I think there was 3 days. It's insane. That used to be, you know, a one-day event. I think it was 3 days this year. But that was the main takeaway from the Texas day. I think a lot of people came away from that saying, you know, let's pump the brakes a bit. Paul Feinbaum just a few weeks ago said he's the best or the most hyped like prospect coming out of the SEC since Tim Tebow back in 2006, going into an SEC season. You know, all the good quarterbacks we've had in that conference, Joe Burrow, Cam Newton, Tebow in there. Just college football quarterbacks in general. It wasn't even just the SEC. Baker Mayfield, Kyler, like he's got to play some damn good football to get up into that stratosphere. And I saw like John Middlecoff even the other day. He's like, people are talking about him like he's LeBron, like he's Tiger Woods. And if he doesn't live up to that expectation, it's going to be a disappointment. I think it's unfair to the kid just because of his last name and what it is. But, you know, all the pressure in the world's on him. All eyes in the world's going to be on him. He even moved from, I think it was plus 750 to plus 650 now to win the Heisman. So the buzz is down there in Austin. It's going to be surreal to finally see him get out there and play some big boys. Last year was Mississippi State and UL Monroe, I think, were his 2 starts. This year he opens up in Columbus. So, you know, the overreactions are going to be out there for flying for sure come Labor Day weekend.
You talk about Texas. What is their schedule? Like, what's the big hurdle as far as their schedule is concerned? Are they a lock in your mind for playoff? If they do play their type of football, Sark has been extremely successful since he has taken over the reins as the head coach at Texas, and he's building something promising down there. And yeah, when you do have a quarterback returning like Arch Manning, even if you get 75% hype that Arch is bringing to the table right now, that's a pretty good percentage there to have a starting quarterback. What exactly is Texas returning from last year in your mind? That's important to know. And as far as the schedule is concerned, focus on the early part, the early hurdles for the Longhorns.
Yeah, a lot of draft choices from last year. I mean, we know Texas was one of the best teams in all of college football last year. Double digit draft choices to the NFL. And like you said, with Sark, he's been building something. I was anti Sark before 2 years ago. He had never won double digit games in a full college season. That's pretty insane. And for him to be able to kind of flip Texas into what he has, it's been really impressive. I mean, Texas was still getting with those previous 2 or 3 coaches 5-star recruits, but they weren't turning those into wins, turning that into production. Sark has done that. He's backed everything up, and the process has been working down there. When you look at the schedule this year, as we talked on, they start out at Ohio State. That's a big game. A lot of eyes are going to be on it. Overreactions are going to be had with that game. But at the end of the day, that doesn't make or break either of those teams' seasons. Maybe it makes or breaks, the chance at a perfect undefeated season, but that's not going to derail either of those teams' season just due to the conference that they play in and the opportunities that they're going to have ahead. They also play San Jose State, Sam Houston State, and UTEP in the non-conference, so some cupcakes after that. And SEC-wise, I think they luck out. They go to Georgia, they go to Florida, they play Oklahoma, and they also host Texas A&M. But they avoid Alabama, they avoid LSU, so they avoid a couple of the big dogs in the conference. I think that they have a pretty good path if they get past that Ohio State game to be undefeated, most likely, headed into the Georgia game. And on paper, this is a team that certainly can run the table. I heard something the other day, I think it was Coward said it. They have 8 different positions where they have a 5-star recruit in there. Not necessarily saying that 5-star recruit is going to be playing from day one, but this is a loaded roster from top to bottom, depth-wise. Can Arch really take them over to the top, though? Quinn Ewers got them there, kind of. Can Arch finish the deal and get that team a national championship? That's going to be the main question, I think. Championship or bust down there in Austin.
Right now, 9.5 is their win total at DraftKings Sportsbook, juiced up at -170. So it's fair to say that you like the over on 9.5 wins for Texas.
Yeah, I would say that. Just when you look, I think they have a few coin flip games at Ohio State. I'm high on Oklahoma, but Oklahoma has a tough schedule, but that's still going to be a really good game. I could see that going either way. At Georgia, and then versus A&M. They got 4 games I could probably see going either way, but I think they'll be favored in most likely 2 of those. You split those and you get to that over 9.5 win total there.
All right. Well, again, a lot to chew on in this conference, no doubt about it. A lot of great quarterbacks in this conference, great coach, and a lot of great programs that have a lot of expectations. Let's just put it that way. But we'll see how it plays out. Again, the playoff rolling on strong for another season. Pretty cool to see how it played out last year. A lot of opportunity for a number of these teams in this conference. So without adding anything more to Texas, let's keep it moving here. And on the Baylor, we go to Vandy, who was the talk of the SEC media day with Diego Pavia. Everybody loves them some Pavia at the quarterback or LSU. I'm going to go ahead and go to LSU with Brian Kelly and company. And the reason being is because it does feel like this is an LSU season that we need to be paying attention to. And it starts at the quarterback with Nussmeier. I was always a Brian Kelly fan. I think he's a stuff as a coach, and he's proven his worth. It's not easy at LSU, no doubt, and I think he needs to have himself a big damn season this year. And you know what? They've been talking some talk down there in the SEC media days, putting the bullseye on week 1 against Clemson at Clemson, talking about how they are the Tigers. They are Death Valley. They're allowing Clemson to borrow it. I think it's going to be a tremendous game. Really looking to that one. But the hype, is it real behind LSU for this upcoming season in your mind?
Yeah, the big emphasis from SEC Media Day that I took away, I probably listened to 5 different shows, read 10 different articles about it. LSU has really kind of changed their offseason approach, and they're really focused on this week 1 game. Brian Kelly has never won in week 1 during his time at LSU. They've always got off to a slow start there. They have a cupcake in week 2 with Louisiana Tech, but then it kind of, gears right back up into the SEC play. It's not an easy game going to Clemson to start, and it's a season kind of tone setter. I think you can look at it. I think Clemson, it doesn't mean as much too, because they're probably going to run through the ACC. But LSU, you lose this game to Clemson, you travel to Ole Miss, you travel to Alabama, you travel to Oklahoma, and you have home games against South Carolina and Texas A&M. A bunch of tough games on that schedule for LSU. So I think it's super important for them to finally get off, on the right foot, and for an aging quarterback or a veteran quarterback like Garrett Nussmeier to be able to lead that team into Death Valley, whatever, if you want to call it the real Death Valley or the fake Death Valley, to be able to lead them in there, that's a huge confidence booster to get rolling into the season, because week 3 comes around as well. You have a Florida team that's up on the rise. Florida won their last 4 games to end the season last year. They have what people are calling potentially the best quarterback in their own right in the SEC, in DJ Lagway. So, you lose that Clemson game, then you play Louisiana Tech. You would assume you go to 1-1 there. Florida comes to Death Valley the next week. That's going to be a LSU -3 type of game. That's going to be a really close game on paper. So it's really important, I think, for this team to get off to a hot start, because you don't want to have 2 losses before September 20th even comes around. So getting off to that hot start is the key for the LSU Tigers, I think, this season.
So in the offseason, the one thing that jumped out at me was the transfer class rankings, and LSU finished 1. So we're talking about the turn. Number one, let's just focus on place last year. It was an ugly season for LSU. So they would have a chip on their shoulder. You returned Nussmeier. You got a great wide receiving core. The expectations are there. And then, oh, by the way, you add this transfer class, which was top dog all of the offseason, according to 24 Sports here. As far as LSU is concerned with transfers, how important do you think that will be with this upcoming season?
It's very important. I think you can also go back to my big thing in college football this year, and my evaluation of these teams is the returning quarterback. And for you to be able to bring in the number 1 transfer class with a quarterback that's experienced as Garrett Nussmeier, you bring in Logan Diggs, one of the top transfer running backs. He transferred out. You lose him. There's just a little bit more pressure on Garrett Nussmeier now. But to be able to bring in that number 1 class, that's special. CJ Daniels transfers from Liberty to LSU. He was one of the top receivers in the transfer portal. You go out and get Xavier Thomas as well, another kind of speed guy. The big thing is the defense. The offense has been really good under Brian Kelly at LSU. Can the defense return to form? I don't know if you remember Harold Perkins. He was a stud his freshman year. Last year he gets hurt, or his second year he has an up and down year. Last year he gets hurt. He's back this year. Can he return to that form? If LSU's defense can kind of get back to the standard that we saw for the better half of the past decade or so, where it was one of the elite defenses in the country, constantly rolling out top defensive backs to the NFL, this is going to be a team that has a chance to compete for national championships. They're going to put up points. That's not going to worry me at all. But if that defense comes around, that's a team that can certainly compete for the SEC title and even the national championship this year.
Are you taking LSU versus Clemson?
I think I saw that's a 3-point spread. I'm very high on Clemson. I've kind of switched my tone on them from this time last year. I saw a mock draft. They have 4 guys projected in the top 10, 6 in the first round of an NFL mock draft. So that's a team that's loaded. I'm going to go with the history there and go with Clemson taking down LSU, and say Brian Kelly hasn't learned his lesson about how to get his team ready. And I can't wait to see his reaction this year. I don't know if you remember last year when he punched the table and the water bottle went flying up. I think that table might get flipped this year if they go down to Clemson and start 0-1.
All right, LSU is 8.5 on the win total this year. Let's keep it moving. And you know what? Let's go to Vanderbilt. Diego Pavia with 5.5. Talk me out of taking the over with the Commodores here.
All right, let's look at the schedule. I think you can.
They got something going on down there, man, and it's called belief. That kid,
for sure.
He's got them believing. He's proved his worth. From where he was transferred. What was it? New Mexico State? Was he at New Mexico State?
New Mexico State. Yep.
And what he's been able to do, of course, in the last year. The only issue I would have with this type of wager, and it's a fun wager, and of course it catches your attention because it's a low total of 5.5. Vanderbilt snuck up on teams last year, and I don't think you're going to have that same type of effect this year. I think teams know, like Alabama, teams know you take a week off against Vandy, you're going to lose that game. I still look at the schedule and I do see 6 wins, and like I said, a lot of belief in that quarterback. If he could stay healthy in that system, and a lot of those guys that have came from New Mexico State, and that's why they were able to get it off the ground running last year. Why not 5.5? Why not 6 wins this year for Vandy?
I have to double check myself, but I believe when I was reading the magazine that they return, the number one team in college football in terms of returning experience is the Vanderbilt Commodores. So there's a good reason right there. They've returned the quarterback, as you said, leads the ship there for them. And when you look at the schedule, Charleston Southern, you probably chalk that up as a win. Georgia State. So the funny thing is last year they beat Alabama. They lose to Georgia State. That just goes to show you college football. But I think that they're a little bit more focused for that this year. They get that win. And then they play Utah State as well. That should be a win. So you look at 3 wins right there. You go to Virginia Tech in week 2. I think that's a coin flip game. We'll see what Virginia Tech goes, but that game could go either way. Just say even if they lose that game, you need to win 3 of your SEC games to hit that over. You go to South Carolina, to Alabama, to Texas, to Tennessee. No cupcakes there. But you at home, you get to host Kentucky, who should be beatable. Missouri should be beatable, and you host LSU. You're probably going to have to, beat Kentucky and beat Missouri. And then if you can steal one on the road, at Alabama, at South Carolina, at Tennessee, who I'm down on Tennessee, that could be a winnable game. They also host Auburn too. Auburn could be a win. So I think 6 wins is definitely doable. They're going to have to steal a game, but that's what the standard kind of is at Vanderbilt. Like you're never going to be regarded as the top dog. You're going to have to play that kind of underdog card. And we saw them do that on various occasions last year. So, why not? Even if you remember 2 years ago, Diego Pavia went to Auburn with New Mexico State and won that game as well. So I'm not ruling anything out with that kid. Am I saying that they're going to get to that goal of the national championship that he set out? No, but 7 wins, 8 wins, I could certainly see. You take care of business against Charleston Southern, Georgia State, Utah State. You put yourself in pretty good position to at least hit that over 5.5.
Yeah, that was going to be a tweet from the beach, and I tried to put it out, but I don't think it would go through at that time. So I just said, all right, I think it's still in my drafts with Diego Pavia over 5.5. That's going to be a play. Matter of fact, I'm going to lock that in today. It's definitely fun, and again, Vandy was enjoyable to watch last year at times, and I know they played the role of spoiler, and like I said, that's not going to happen this year. They're not going to sneak up on anybody, but it's such a low mark, 5.5. There are winnable football games on that schedule. All right, quarterbacks. One of those games that Vandy will be playing is against South Carolina, and LaNorris Sellers, pretty darn quarterback in his own right. That's a week 3 matchup. September 13th is that game. The game is being played in South Carolina. So focusing on South Carolina here and LaNorris Sellers, what is your thoughts? Are you believing what he has going for the Gamecocks this year? 7.5 is their win total at this point in time. Your outlook for South Carolina this year?
I love South Carolina. I think that on paper, they're one of the more talented teams in the SEC. I think LaNorris Sellers might be the best quarterback in the SEC. And I'm going to say that about a bunch of different guys, but the quarterbacks in the SEC are insane. Arch Manning, Garrett Nussmeier, Marcel Reed at A&M, Austin Simmons at Ole Miss, DJ Lagway, LaNorris Sellers, John Mateer. Like, there's so many players that I think you can make an argument for as a top quarterback in the SEC. It's going to be such a fun conference week to week. But when you look at South Carolina, they kind of fall into the Oklahoma trap. I think Oklahoma is going to be a much improved team. I think they're going to have a nice year, but they got a murderer's row of a schedule too. I think they have the 5th hardest ranked schedule. They go to LSU, they go to Ole Miss, they go to A&M. They have Clemson in the non-con. They have Virginia Tech in the non-con, which is going to be a tough game as well. You host Alabama, you host Oklahoma. Like, they don't really have any cupcakes in the SEC. They play Vandy that we talked about. Is frisky, but your 2 non-conference, cupcakes, South Carolina State and Coastal Carolina, you should be able to get wins there. But that SEC schedule, man, is a murderer's row. 3 out of 4 weeks. In a 4-week span, you're going to LSU, you host Oklahoma, you host Alabama, and then you go to Ole Miss. That's as tough as it gets in college football. So they're a team total I'm probably sticking away from because I could see, a ceiling of a 9-win team, a 10-win team. But I could also see a floor if they go crashing out as a 4 or a 5-win team just because of how tough that schedule is. So South Carolina's win total is one I'm sticking away from. But I do think that they have one of the highest ceilings, but potentially one of the lowest floors just due to that rigorous schedule that they have to play.
Three teams all knotted up at the top of the SEC win total list at 9.5: Alabama, Georgia, and Texas. We hit on Texas. Let's go ahead and hit on Alabama and Georgia here. We'll open up with the Crimson Tide. The one thing that jumped out at me, two things. One, they should have finished better than what their 9-4 record was last year. That's easy for me to say, but they were talented enough. And, you just got some bad quarterback play at some bad times. Of course, the bowl game was ugly, but 9-4, not the season that most Alabama fans are used to. That's fair to say. But the other thing that jumped at me was Kalen DeBoer in his second season at Oregon, I believe, got him to the championship game. So this is an opportunity for him to prove all those doubters wrong. And I was a huge fan of the hire. I can't believe they were able to get him. He's a tremendous offensive mind. I just don't know enough about Ty Simpson. I just don't know enough about some of these other players that are going to have to come in and hit the ground running here. They open up with Florida State, another team that's licking their wounds after last year. I'm high on the Seminoles this year, Beef. That's not an easy game. Not an easy game to open up shop with on August 30th, regardless of what those odds makers say. But Alabama, talk to me about the quarterback position. Of course, Jalen Milroe goes to the NFL. Ty Simpson stepping in. What are your thoughts there? And, of course, Kalen DeBoer, year 2 with the Crimson Tide.
Yeah, Kalen DeBoer is supposed to be, a quarterback whisperer. He's supposed to be a quarterback guru, be able to get the most out of. So in a situation where the quarterback spot's a little bit of an unknown, that's where, a head coach comes into play. And Ryan Grubb, his former offensive coordinator over there at Washington, goes to the Seahawks last year. He's coming back now to Alabama after 1 year in the NFL. So he pairs back up with DeBoer. So you would have to think there'd be an improvement there. But you do look at, your point of year 2 at Washington, he's able to take them to the national championship. They had Michael Penix throwing the ball as well. They had Jalen McMillan. They had Rome Odunze at receiver. They had legit studs all over that team. So, disregard that the helmet said Washington. They had legit NFL players, 2 first-round picks, and McMillan was either a second or third last year on that offense. I was listening to something today, though. Ty Simpson certainly seems to be in the lead, but I don't think he's won the job by any means so far. Austin Mack in the mix as well, a guy that's been there for a while. And then they got a 5-star in Keelan Russell as well, who is the more talented guy, the freshman, but, by far the least experience of that mix. So keep an eye out for that. It doesn't sound like anyone's ran away with the job, and I think it's one of those situations where, it come whatever the first game is, August 30th, come August 23rd, that Saturday before, if no one's really poked their head out as the overwhelming leader, I wouldn't be surprised if they did turn to Russell and basically be like, this is your team now, go make the most of it. And they could always turn back to one of the veterans later, but I think that they might turn and give the more talented kid the snaps from day one. I think if you do have Ty Simpson in there, he's more of that game manager type of role, probably back to that AJ McCarron, Greg McElroy type. And I think Kalen DeBoer and Ryan Grubb want to go out there and throw the ball around the yard to Ryan Williams. So don't be surprised if Keelan Russell is actually the guy under center in week 1.
Yeah, Ryan Williams, tremendous talent. Only a sophomore, too, which is kind of scary. A lot of great receivers in college football. It's absurd. A lot of young, great receivers. Yeah, look, Alabama, it's not going to shock me if they get it going down there. That they have won their last 23 season openers. I'm having a little fun with the Florida State bit. They should beat Florida State there. Even though I did take Florida State over on the win total, bottom line is I don't think I counted that one as a victory. Would be nice, though, to start off with a dub there. But I do look at Alabama figuring it out and just being, like I said, I didn't think they were as bad as a 9-4 record was last year. No. And that's saying something, like 9-4, most teams would kill for that record, but most teams aren't Alabama. So we'll see what happens as far as that one is concerned. Interesting note as far as the quarterback situation with how important that is, of course, to everything that they're doing at offensive scheme. Also, you want to be fair about what took place for DeBoer in year 1. The fact that he stepped in, replacing Nick Saban, not an easy task. All the transfers that left, I just feel like it's going to be a little bit smoother of a ride for him, and he managed those Rapids well. So I'm a huge DeBoer fan, was before, and I'm excited to see year 2.
Yeah, the recruiting class for next year, I believe they're killing it. They have 4 5-stars already signed, so it's not easy to say. Being if you're an Alabama fan, to say remain patient, remain calm. Just say if this team this year goes 9-3. I think the best days are still ahead for Alabama under Kalen DeBoer. And you look at them last year, like you said, that record might be a little bit misleading. They beat Oklahoma in that game where they just absolutely did not show up. They lost 24-3. They beat Oklahoma. They're going to the playoff last year. That was kind of like a win and in game. They still had to beat Auburn the next week, but which they wound up doing. But if they beat Oklahoma and they beat Auburn to finish the season, they go to the playoff and we're probably singing, a different tune. I think that they're set up for good success. It just kind of comes down to the quarterback. And when we were talking about, when I was rattling off all those quarterback names, I didn't mention the Alabama quarterback and I didn't mention the Georgia quarterback. And that might be where the biggest difference is. Like, you need to have an elite quarterback today in the SEC if you're going to want to, compete there at the top. And interested to see, who rolls out a quarterback for Alabama, and then also what can Gunnar Stockton do kind of in that game manager role for Georgia.
And that's a perfect segue. Let's talk about them Bulldogs, 9.5. Of course, Kirby Smart, another year last year. Look, they lost to Texas in the playoff. I'm tripping. I'm out of my mind. 11-3 final year, or last year's record for Georgia, and again, just coming up short.
They also Notre Dame.
Notre Dame, there you go. That's
the
right.
Sideline incident, remember?
That's right. That's right, yes.
Parker Jones.
Gunnar Stockton and Georgia for this upcoming season, is it as easy as, look, for years, how many years straight, Georgia was the best program in college football. Kirby had a juggernaut. They had a little bit of a hiccup. Watch out. Is Gunnar Stockton good enough? And again, I want to be fair, because last year what had to happen with everything at the quarterback position, replacing, it's not easy, but again, they were able to win a bunch of games. So this year, your thoughts on Stockton being the guy right from Jump Street, and of course the expectations through the roof off of a disappointing season last year.
Yeah, I mean, Gunnar Stockton is not your typical 5-star recruit. He's not, the Arch Manning. He's not the DJ Lagway. He's going to be, and what Kirby wants him to be is that Stetson Bennett type of quarterback, where I just talked about it, like, you might not have the elite quarterback here at this program, but they're still going to be set up around him to win and just be that game manager. I think the main reason why they had some struggles last year was because Carson Beck was out there turning the football over. If you're out there turning the football over, you kind of take back on what the strength of this team is, and that's always going to be on the defensive side of the ball, being able to run the ball, and then being able to hit some key plays off that running game. Stetson Bennett, you look at his stats, he didn't really ever do that much, but he's a 2-time national championship winning quarterback. You look at the blueprint of that Alabama had for all those years, whether it was Blake Sims, whether it was McElroy, whether it was A.J. McCarron, all those winning football games, they took care of the football and they relied on the defense and the rest of the skill players. So Gunnar Stockton, point blank period, goal number one, take care of the football. We have enough talent around you. We've got a really good offensive line in front of you. They go out and bring in one of my favorite transfers in Zachariah Branch, transfer from USC. Dude can fly. They're going to be, I think, they don't have the elite names that they've had in the past, on the offensive end, whether it's a Ladd McConkey, whether it's a Brock Bowers. They're going to need to have a few guys step up, but I'm sure Kirby's been doing some work in the recruiting and in the transfer portal. They're going to be just fine. So look for Georgia to get back to kind of that bully ball style that was working for them under Stetson Bennett.
Yep. All right, let's talk about some teams that don't have the expectation to win the conference, but do have some interesting storylines as far as hot seats from the coaching perspective, but also have some good quarterback play. Let's start with Florida. Billy Napier, again, last year was a lot of criticism, took it on the chin, 8-5 season, disappointing, but was able to turn it around somewhat due to the fact that DJ Lagway was a hell of a get. Let's just put it that way. He did get hurt last year. Your thoughts on Lagway this year? Are you concerned about that shoulder? And how special of a player is he if he's able to remain healthy this year?
I mean, he's the number one ranked quarterback last year, and that was my point from the beginning of the season last year, and that's kind of the point I just made with Keelan Russell at Alabama. You can point to, like, all right, this is my guy, this is my quarterback, even if we have some up and downs, give him a year to work with, give him a year of experience. And I think that's what Billy Napier did, bought himself some more time. They won 4 games down the stretch last year. They knocked off a couple ranked opponents. They knocked Ole Miss basically out of the playoffs. They had a really strong end to the season last year. So I think it's the key thing for them is to turn this, into some more momentum. And DJ Lagway has a chance to prove that he is the best quarterback in the conference, maybe even the best quarterback in the entire nation. I don't know if they're going to win enough games to to be, in Heisman contention, but, NFL scouts attention, NFL eyes, like people are going to look at him and say, this might be, the number one pick next year. He can't come out this upcoming season, but the following year, 2027. And that's when it's rumored Archer's going to go out too. So that would be a pretty crazy scenario. But Florida's got a really tough schedule again this year. They had a murderer's row last year, and this year is equally as tough. They start out with Long Island and South Florida. Hopefully you move to 2-0 there. But from then on, you might have a ranked opponent on your schedule every single game the rest of the way. LSU, Miami, Texas A&M, Mississippi State shouldn't be ranked. Georgia, Kentucky probably not ranked. Ole Miss, Tennessee, Florida State. You might have a stretch there where your last 9 games or your last 10 games, you're playing 8 ranked teams down the stretch. So how good is Lagway? The retention of Florida has been really good. The development, and they've kind of taken that old school approach of, we're ushering in a new coach. We're bringing this kind of program back up to speed. And respect to Florida, shout out to Florida for giving them the time. Hopefully for their sake it pays off, but it's hard to see them winning 8 or 9 games just because of how tough those games are, and a lot of those games being on the road at Ole Miss, the neutral versus Georgia, at A&M, at Miami, at LSU. Some tough environments on that schedule.
All right, let's talk about Brent Venables, his 4th season with Oklahoma, and I believe Phil Steele is extremely high on the Sooners this year, getting it going, and I guess keeping Venables employed. We know he has the backing of everybody at Oklahoma, but, man, you got to win games. 6-7 last year, extremely disappointing. I know that they've been able to beat Texas. I think they did in 23, if I'm not mistaken. But other than that, there's not a lot to hang your hat on with Brent Venables at this point in time. After this season's done, man, and shout out to Nick McClay pointing out that Oklahoma will be traveling to the link on September 13th. Temple and Oklahoma, let's go. We got to make a road trip. We got to make a trip to that one. If we don't get out to Penn State, Villanova, we got to make Temple and Oklahoma. Anyways, as far as Oklahoma this upcoming season, what is your thoughts on the outlook with the Sooners?
So I did my full breakdown on them yesterday. I have them going 7-5. The win total is 6.5. I think if they do go 7-5, that results in a firing. I think Oklahoma is one of the 10 best programs, blue blood programs in the entire sport. You can't be going 6-7, 10-3, 6-7, and then 7-5 or 7-6 if they go to a bowl game or whatever and keep your job. I think giving him an extension before last year was silly. Maybe it was just a little bit of security as they transition into the SEC, but you can't just be expected to be a 7-8 win program at Oklahoma. Lincoln Riley, say what you want about him, but he won 10, 11 games every single year he was there. And that's why he eventually wrote off to USC. Someone comes calling for $100 million, you're probably going to go. But he built that program to the dominant program of the Big 12. They definitely overtook Texas over the past decade, and then both those programs changed in the SEC, and Texas is taken back over. So a lot of pressure, but they're going to be a fun team to watch. Had a great defense last year, had one of the worst offensive lines in the country, had 0 returning starters on that line last year. This year they bring back 4. Their top 5 receivers were all out at one point last season. So they had a lot of moving parts, but they bring in one of the top portal quarterbacks in John Mateer, and they bring his offensive coordinator with him from Washington State and Ben Arbuckle. So that's going to be a good retention, and one of the best running backs in Jaden out of Cal. He ran for 1,300 yards. So going to be a fun team, but they have the toughest schedule in the entire country. I have them going 7-5.
All right. Still a lot to discuss when it comes to the conference of the SEC, and everybody understands why, because it's such a gauntlet. We got Ole Miss. We didn't even touch on with Lane there. Tennessee, which you said you were down on. Of course, the quarterback situation with Nico's is a little bit of disappointment. Auburn, a lot going on there. Arkansas, curious to know your thoughts. Kentucky, Missouri, list goes on. Again, this was first one here. We're going to be going live a lot more, all things beef up front, and of course, summer school starting next week. We'll get you out of here on this one. Ryan Beef Coyle, SEC championship game winner 2025, Texas plus 260, Georgia plus 340, Bama plus 390, LSU 8-1, A&M 15-1, Ole Miss 15-1. Then it goes Tennessee, Florida, South Carolina, Auburn, Oklahoma, Missouri, Arkansas, Vandy, Kentucky, Mississippi State. Give me one favorite that you like to win and a sleeper team potentially to play the role of upset and win the conference.
I'll go Georgia plus 340 to win it. I think having Stockton in there and trusting him to not turn the football over is going to be huge for that team. I think they're just going to beat people up, get back to kind of the winning ways that we've seen from them over those national championship years. I'm a little bit worried just about Arch's kind of overhype. We haven't seen him in, a clutch moment, a big moment yet. So I think we're kind of pushing that forward a little. Gunnar Stockton, remember, he played it in the playoff for this team last year, played in some big moments. So I'll go with Georgia and the best coach, I think, in the country, and Kirby Smart. And a surprise team, coming from the bottom of the pack, I guess. I'll go with South Carolina. I said it. I think that they have one of the highest ceilings in college football, but also one of the lowest floors. So if you're going to make me take a stab on one of these underdogs, I'll take South Carolina there at 25-1. I think if their quarterback plays well, and if he does, they have maybe the best quarterback in the country in Sellers, and they're playing some of the best teams in the country. He's going to elevate himself to the Heisman favor probably. And then remember Dylan Stewart from last year. He was just a freshman, and he looked like an absolute freak at times. He's back this year for South Carolina as well on that defensive line. So give me South Carolina there as my kind of underdog to win it at 25-1, and Georgia is my favorite at plus 340.
Going LSU to win it, 8-1, and give me Vandy as a upset special, 200-1. No, I kid. I am all popping up though, man. Just like everybody else in the country, the kid's a superstar. So, you know what? His attitude is has a superstar vibe. I don't think he's going to be playing on Sundays. Let's just put it that way. But great.
Legend.
What's that?
CFL legend coming up.
Hey. Nice work there. Great stuff. Ryan Beef Coyle, you can be found on all things socials, Ryan Coyle 35. Of course, Beef Up Front is available at foxphlgambler.com. Make sure you subscribe on all things YouTube, all things socials, and we're off and running. Football season is here. Until next week, everybody keep it locked right here to The Gambler.